Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Carolee Makes Cards. Many years ago I was very involved in paper toling. When I saw this gorgeous spray of flowers in Joy Clair Designs' newest release, Forever Moments, I knew immediately that I wanted to apply this technique. I began by printing this digital image 3 times on Bristol Smooth cardstock. The first thing I like to do is designate each image for one of the layers. If you look carefully, you'll notice some handwriting at the bottom of each image. One layer would be designated for the leaves, another for the buds, and the third one for the flowers. Working with Caron markers, I begin by coloring the panel that I have labeled leaves. This panel will be dimensionally the furthest away. Because there's so much dimension in paper tole, all of the elements need to be colored. To some degree, all of the layers will be visible. Don't panic, it sounds like a lot of coloring, but really it isn't. Because this panel is designated for the leaves, for the flowers, I'm just using one of the 2 colors and coloring them in. The leaves, however, will be more detailed. They are being colored with 3 greens: olive black, olive green, and lush green. The mid-tone is applied at the base of the leaf, followed by the lightest green. I then use my watercolor brush to blend those colors together and pull them up to the edge to create a gradient. The darkest green is used to accentuate the veining in the leaves. After all 3 tones of green have been applied, I then use my water brush and start at the edge of the leaf and pull it diagonally towards the center vein. This creates some additional texture and detail in the leaves. For the second image, again I use just one of the 2 colors that are going to be used on the flowers and color in those petals. This layer is designated for buds. The detail coloring is certainly not very involved. I just simply add in the almond color over the entire bud and then some shadow areas using the color skin. Because I've already done the detail coloring for the leaves, they're going to be cut off when I do my fussy cutting, and I don't have to worry about coloring the leaves again. So as you can see, the coloring is very straightforward and quick and easy. However, what there is a lot of is fussy cutting. I am anxious to see how these 2 layers are going to work together. So I don't jump in and do the coloring on the 3rd image just yet, and I proceed with the fussy cutting of the first 2 images. I'm fussy cutting the 2nd image now, and it goes a lot quicker than the first one because I'm just trimming those leaves right off. So now I'm working on the final layer, and this one is designated for the flowers. The flowers are colored completely with almond, and then some shadow areas are put in using the color skin. Believe me when I say this coloring is just so quick and easy. So I've decided that on this 3rd panel I am going to go ahead and do the detail coloring on the buds. Well, really you can't call it detail coloring because it's just too straightforward. Because I may want to keep them at the same level as the flowers, and I'll just see how it looks as I put it together. When fussy cutting the final panel, I am just cutting out the flowers. I leave the stems and the leaves behind. This is definitely the easiest of all the panels to cut. With all the fussy cutting done, I go back to the first 2 images and trim out those interior background pieces. Using scissors for this work is quite tedious, and if my crafting room was not packed up, I would have been using a crafting knife and it would have gone a lot smoother and quickly. My fussy cutting is far from perfect, and particularly in those interior background pieces that were trimmed out. Using my darkest green Caron marker, I go around all of the cut edges on the 2 sprays and all of the individual flowers. This does take a little bit of extra time, but it really is worth it. It just hides all the imperfections. Now for the fun part, building up the dimension in the floral spray. The paper Tole technique can be done with foam dimensionals, but I prefer to use silicone. The foam will certainly give you dimension, but it won't do is give you the ability to tilt those flowers, giving a more natural appearance. You can actually buy silicone that is designed for paper toling. It is quite expensive, and I didn't have time to wait for an order to come in. So I just went down to my local hardware store and bought a tube of silicone. The tube's opening is certainly larger than what you would find on a paper Tole silicone tube, but I just took some extra care. So now you can see I have layered the second image on top of the base image, which included the detailed painted leaves. So as I add this layer on top of the base, I am lying it just flat, and I'm making sure not to push too hard so that I don't lose dimension, but I still want to have good contact between the two. I use a craft pick to help get that top layer aligned with the second one. I let these 2 layers sit for about 30 minutes so the silicone sets up before I start adding in my individual flowers. For the final layer, the glue is applied a little bit differently because I'm going to be tilting the flowers. It is applied at the stem end of the flower. I apply just a little bit more pressure on that end where the glue is to make the top of the flower pop up. The flower spray is finished up with black Nouveau drops on the stamens, and it is set aside to dry overnight. For the background, I die cut navy cardstock and white sheet foam with Pink Fresh Studios slim stitch scallop rectangles. I use a fan watercolor brush with watered down white gouache on the rectangular piece to create a crosshatch pattern. The panel is finished off with some spatter using my smallest watercolor brush and more of the white gouache. The navy frame is adhered to the foam one. It is centered on a card base that measures 3 3/4 inches by 8 3/4 inches. The rectangular panel is recessed into the frame. After the flower spray is adhered to the card, black Nouveau drops embellish it. This sentiment, one of many that is included with this digital stamp set, is foam backed and adhered to the card. And that wraps up this card where paper Tole meets card making, featuring Joy Clair Designs' beautiful new release, Forever Moments. As always, I appreciate your visit.